Welcome to Revenge Cookies. She died on a highway at midnight, cleaning up a mess that was never hers. When she opened her eyes again, she was 21, standing in the house that stole everything from her. This time, she didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She left. The last thing Ivy Lane heard before she died was Julian Whitaker telling her to stop being dramatic. His voice came through the car speakers, calm and irritated. Just get the original files and fix this before the board finds out. Rain blurred the highway ahead. Ivy had been awake for almost 20 hours, cleaning up another scandal for the Whitaker Foundation. Olivia Mercer had approved the campaign. Julian had defended her. Eleanor Whitaker had ordered everyone to protect the family's reputation. Yet Ivy was the one driving across Greyhaven at midnight to retrieve the evidence. That was how her life had always worked. The Whitakers made the mess. Ivy disappeared inside it. A truck's headlights flashed through the rain. Tires screamed. Then everything went silent. When Ivy opened her eyes again, a crystal chandelier burned above her. Music filled the room. 200 guests stood beneath golden lights, holding champagne and congratulating Julian Whitaker on his 21st birthday. Ivy stared at the silver initials on the cake. JW, her breath stopped. She knew this night. 7 years ago, Olivia Mercer had destroyed Eleanor Whitaker's sapphire necklace and blamed Ivy. Julian had believed Olivia without asking a single question. Ivy had cried, apologized, and spent the next 7 years trying to earn a place in a family that only valued her when she was useful. Now, she was back, 21 years old, alive. Ivy. Eleanor Whitaker stood beside her, smiling for the guests. Go upstairs and see whether Olivia needs help. The same order, the same trap. In her first life, Ivy had obeyed. She had found Olivia alone in Julian's private sitting room, weakening the necklace clasp. Minutes later, Olivia screamed and accused Ivy of attacking her out of jealousy. This time, Ivy placed her glass on a passing tray. Number Eleanor's smile tightened. What did you say? I said I'm not going upstairs. Tonight is not the time for one of your moods. And I'm not going to be alone with Olivia. Eleanor's eyes turned cold. You sound ungrateful. That word had controlled Ivy for years. The Whitakers had given her a room after her mother died. They had sent her to good schools and dressed her for foundation events. In return, Ivy was expected to stay quiet, solve problems, and never ask how much of her life truly belonged to her. In her first life, she had learned the truth too late. Her mother had left a trust. The Whitakers had not paid for Ivy's life. They had simply controlled the money that already belonged to her. Ivy. Julian crossed the ballroom toward them. At 21, he already carried himself like the future belonged to him. What did you say to my mother? I told her I'm not going upstairs. Olivia is waiting for you. Then she can come down. Julian stared at her, surprised by the refusal. Before he could answer, Olivia appeared at the top of the staircase, wearing Eleanor's sapphire necklace. Julian, she called softly. She began walking down. Halfway to the ballroom, she touched the clasp. The necklace slipped from her throat and struck the marble step. The chain snapped. Several guests gasped. Olivia looked directly at Ivy. Why did you loosen the clasp earlier? Julian turned at once. What did you do? Ivy almost laughed. The accusation had barely left Olivia's mouth, yet Julian had already chosen his answer. I didn't touch it. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to embarrass anyone. I just don't understand why you hate me. I don't hate you. Olivia blinked. You're not important enough to hate. The nearest guests went silent. Julian stepped closer. Apologize. Number, his jaw tightened. Ivy, don't make this worse. She looked at him and remembered every version of Julian. The boy who locked her outside his treehouse. The teenager who called her a charity case. The man who would one day let her take the blame for Olivia's scandal. The voice in the rain telling her to fix everything. Ivy opened her purse and removed her phone. Eleanor's face changed. Put that away. Ivy had arrived early that evening. She had remembered the security camera above the east staircase and the Whitakers' embarrassingly simple password. She connected her phone to the ballroom screen. Julian frowned. What are you doing? Checking the facts. She pressed play. The security footage showed Olivia alone on the upper landing. She looked around, removed the necklace, bent the small metal ring twice, and placed it back around her neck. Then she walked toward the stairs. The ballroom became completely silent. Olivia's face went white. Julian stared at the screen, then at her, then back at Ivy. He did not apologize. Instead, he asked, "Where did you get that video?" Of course, he cared more about being exposed than about Ivy being falsely accused. Eleanor moved forward. "This is a private family matter." "No," Ivy said. "Olivia accused me in front of your guests. That made it public." Olivia began crying harder. I panicked. I only wanted tonight to be perfect for Julian. Julian's expression softened toward her. Ivy knew that look. Olivia gave him admiration. Ivy gave him loyalty, labor, and forgiveness. Julian had always preferred the easier gift. "Delete the video," he ordered. "Number, you live in my house. I sleep in your mother's guest room. That isn't the same thing." A whisper moved through the crowd. Julian's face reddened. "You're really going to ruin my birthday over this. I didn't plan the performance. Olivia did. You just gave her the stage." Eleanor stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Everything you have came from this family. In her first life, that threat would have terrified Ivy. This time, she reached behind her neck and removed the pearl necklace Eleanor had given her years ago. Eleanor had once said it made Ivy look almost like a Whitaker. Almost. Ivy placed it on the nearest table. "Thank you for lending it to me." Julian stared at the pearls. "You're overreacting. Number, I'm leaving." She went upstairs to the small room near the service staircase. Her passport, social security card, birth certificate, laptop, sketchbooks, and $460 in tutoring money went into a travel bag. Then she opened the bottom desk drawer. A folder lay beneath her school records. Evelyn Lane Trust Administration documents. Her hands trembled. A knock struck the door. "Ivy, open it." Julian entered using a spare key. His eyes dropped to the bag. "What are you doing?" "You have nowhere to go. I'll find somewhere." "With what money?" "My money." He laughed once. "You mean the money my family gives you?" "Number, I mean mine." He stepped in front of the door. "You're angry. Fine. But don't do something stupid." Ivy took out her phone. "I'm recording. Move away from the door." His face darkened. "You've changed." "No," she said. I remembered that doors open from both sides. For several seconds, he stared at her. Then he moved. Ivy carried her bag downstairs. Eleanor saw it and lost her careful smile. "If you walk out tonight, don't expect us to keep paying for your life." Ivy stopped at the front door. "My mother already paid for my life." The ballroom went still. "My attorney will contact yours about the trust." Julian looked at Eleanor. "What trust?" Ivy opened the door. "Ask your mother." Rain swept across the stone steps. Behind her, Olivia whispered, "She'll come back." Ivy turned one final time. "No," she said. "I won't." At 2 a.m, she sat in a 24-hour diner with wet hair, a travel bag, and no address. A waitress placed coffee in front of her. "Bad night." Ivy looked at her reflection in the dark window. "No," she said. "The best one I've had in years." She opened her laptop and emailed the law firm listed on the trust documents. By 9 the next morning, she had rented a tiny room above a laundromat. At 9:12, her phone rang. "Miss Lane," an older man said. "My name is Grant Ellis. I've been waiting for you to contact me." Ivy sat on the unfamiliar bed. "For how long?" "Since you became legally entitled to control your own affairs." "That was yesterday." "Yes," he said. "And I believe we need to discuss what the Whitaker family has been doing with your money." Grant Ellis's office was above a dental clinic on Ellison Street. There were no marble floors, dark wood panels, or silent assistants guarding heavy doors. The receptionist drank from a chipped mug that read "World's Most Adequate Golfer." Ivy found the ordinariness comforting. Grant was in his 60s, with silver hair and the cautious manner of a man who had spent decades watching families turn affection into paperwork. He stood when Ivy entered. No one in the Whitaker house had ever stood because she walked into a room. "Before we begin," Grant said, "I need to know whether you came here voluntarily." "Yes." "Are the Whitakers currently pressuring you?" "Not in person." He seemed to understand the distinction. Grant opened a file bearing her mother's name. Evelyn created the trust after she became ill. The funds were meant to support your education, housing, medical care, and personal development. Ivy gripped her hands beneath the table. Eleanor told me she controlled it. She was your temporary guardian. She was never the trustee. The words landed quietly. That made them worse. Then how did she control everything? Because you were young, you lived in her home, and no one challenged the arrangement. Grant turned several pages toward her. The numbers were not large by Whitaker standards, but they made Ivy's stomach tighten. Clothing allowances, education support, transportation expenses, household care, foundation event preparation. The dresses Eleanor had chosen for charity dinners had been charged against Ivy's trust. So had the etiquette classes Ivy had hated and the private tutor hired after Julian told everyone she was too stupid to pass calculus. Even part of the Whitaker household expenses had been listed as costs associated with caring for her. They used my mother's money, Ivy said slowly, and told me I owed them gratitude for spending it. Grant did not soften the answer. Yes. For years, Ivy had believed every meal came with a debt. Every school payment proved the Whitakers were generous. Every request for privacy made her selfish. Now the entire story collapsed into a stack of financial records. What happens next? We request a complete accounting. All communication regarding the trust comes directly to you. We also review whether any expenses were improperly charged. Ivy pushed the file back toward him. I want every record. That is reasonable. I want Eleanor formally notified that she cannot speak for me, sign for me, or make decisions on my behalf. Grant nodded. We can send that notice today. Her phone vibrated. An email from Eleanor. Ivy opened it. Your behavior last night was deeply disappointing. If you return home, apologize to Olivia, and agree to discuss your future calmly, we are willing to forgive this incident. Do not involve outsiders before speaking with us. You are too young to understand the consequences of what you are doing. Ivy handed the phone to Grant. He read the message once. Forward this to me. That's all. Do not sign anything they send. Do not delete any messages. Keep every conversation in writing. 3 simple instructions. No guilt. No demand that she be polite to the people threatening her. Ivy forwarded the email. For the first time since leaving the estate, she felt she had an adult on her side who did not expect gratitude as payment. The next afternoon, Julian found her at the laundromat. Ivy was folding sheets behind the counter, in exchange for a small reduction in rent when his black SUV stopped outside. He entered as though the cracked floor had personally offended him. His gaze moved across the washing machines until it found her. You really live here? Yes. This is ridiculous. It's affordable. It isn't safe. Neither was your house. His expression tightened. I came to take you home. Ivy folded another sheet. Number, my mother is willing to forget what happened. How generous of her. Olivia has been humiliated. She accused me in front of 200 people. She made a mistake. She planned a lie. Julian stepped closer. A few customers glanced toward them. Ivy, don't make a scene. She looked around the laundromat. You mean don't disagree where someone might hear me? His jaw flexed. You won't survive like this for a month. In her first life, those words would have frightened her back into obedience. Now she smiled. Then you won't have to wait long to be proven right. She lifted the basket of folded sheets. Julian did not move. What do you actually want from me? Aunts, Ivy would have answered immediately, a seat beside him. One moment of trust, one public acknowledgement that she mattered. Now the answer was much simpler. My documents, my remaining belongings, and a complete record of my trust. His face hardened. Anything else? Yes. Stop coming to where I live. Something almost wounded crossed his expression. Do you hate me that much? No, Ivy said. I'm finally losing interest. That hurt him more. She could tell by the way his shoulders went rigid. Good. Ivy carried the sheets upstairs and closed the door. Freedom was not glamorous. Her room was narrow enough that she could nearly touch the desk and bed at the same time. The pipes knocked at night. The bathroom was shared with 3 other tenants. But the lock belonged to her. So did the prepaid phone account she opened under her own name. So did the new bank account Grant helped her establish. For the first time, Eleanor could not inspect her calls. Julian could not demand her location. And no one could threaten to remove her from a family plan. Ivy enrolled at Westbridge University, using her own email address. In her first life, she had studied communications at a college close to the estate, because Eleanor called it practical, and Julian said Ivy would fail somewhere more demanding. This time, Ivy chose digital media design and entrepreneurship. She already knew what the future would reward: short videos, emotional hooks, stories strong enough to stop someone's thumb in the middle of a screen. For years, Ivy had created fundraising videos and social campaigns for the Whitaker Foundation, while Olivia accepted praise as the creative mind behind them. This time, the invoices would carry Ivy's name. Her first weeks were difficult. She worked mornings at the laundromat, attended classes in the afternoon, and built sample campaigns at night. She ate too much peanut butter toast. She missed buses. Once, when the heat failed, she sat on the floor and cried from exhaustion. But she never called Julian. Every hardship outside the Whitaker estate had an exit. The estate had none. Her first client was a bakery 2 blocks from campus. Mrs. Alvarez studied the flyer. Ivy had posted near the student center. Story-driven social media for small businesses. Student rates. Fast delivery. "You look very young," Mrs. Alvarez said. "I am. Do you know what you're doing?" Ivy thought about the dozens of successful campaigns she had created in her first life. Yes, she filmed cinnamon rolls beneath warm lights and wrote a 30-second story about a recipe passed from grandmother to granddaughter. She delivered 3 versions, each with a different opening line. One video gained more views in 2 days than the bakery's account had received during the previous year. By Saturday morning, the featured pastries had sold out. Mrs. Alvarez handed Ivy $200 and a box of croissants. Ivy returned to her room, placed the money on the bed, and stared at it. $200 was not wealth, but it was proof. She had created something valuable without begging anyone to notice her. Her phone rang. Mrs. Alvarez again. "I gave your number to a friend who owns a fitness studio," she said. "She wants to hire you." Ivy opened her laptop. A second inquiry was already waiting in her inbox. Then a third notification appeared. An email from Westbridge University's financial office confirmed that her tuition payment had been processed directly from her account. Her money, her school, her work. Ivy smiled. 2 days later, she was sitting outside the campus library, preparing a proposal for the fitness studio, when a shadow fell across her screen. "You blocked me." Ivy recognized Julian's voice without looking up. "Yes." She closed the document. Julian sat across from her without permission. Olivia lowered herself into the seat beside him, wearing the expression of someone arriving to perform an act of mercy. "I asked Julian to bring me," Olivia said softly. "I came to apologize." Ivy checked the time. "You have 10 minutes. Julian stared at her. "You only have 10 minutes for us." Ivy reopened her laptop. "Yes," she said. "Some of us have work." Olivia folded her hands in her lap. "I'm sorry about the necklace," she said. "I was under a lot of pressure that night. Everyone expected everything to be perfect, and I panicked." Ivy waited. Olivia's fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag. "That's it?" Ivy asked. Olivia blinked. "What do you mean?" "Your apology is that you were stressed." I admitted. "I made a mistake." "You accused me of damaging something valuable in front of 200 people." Julian leaned forward. She said she was sorry. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Ivy looked at him. Hard for whom? His expression cooled. "You never know when to stop. I learned from you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears almost immediately. "I knew you hated me." Ivy sighed, not dramatically. She was simply tired. "Olivia, if tears were currency, you would own half the city." Olivia's mouth opened. Julian stood so quickly that several students nearby turned to look. "You have no right to speak to her like that. And you have no right to come to my school, sit at my table, and tell me how I'm allowed to speak." "Your school," he repeated. "Yes, I enrolled here. I pay tuition. I work here. You're the visitor." Julian glanced around the campus, as though he had only just noticed it existed. This was a place where his last name meant very little. No one moved aside for him. No one waited for his approval. Olivia recovered first. "We only wanted to help." "No," Ivy said. "You wanted to see whether I was miserable." A flicker crossed Olivia's face. Julian studied Ivy. "Are you?" There was something strange beneath the question. He needed her to say yes. If she was suffering, then leaving had been childish. If she secretly wanted him to rescue her, then he remained important. The world could return to its proper order. Ivy reopened her proposal. Number, I'm busy. Julian remained seated. Ivy, this isn't you. Her fingers stopped above the keyboard. For years, other people had described her in whatever way made her easiest to control. Quiet Ivy. Grateful Ivy. Sensitive Ivy. Difficult Ivy. The Whitakers' rescued orphan. Julian's shadow. Olivia's jealous opposite. Ivy looked up. No, she said. This is the first time you've met me when you couldn't control the introduction. Julian's expression changed. After several seconds, Olivia stood. Come on, Julian. She clearly wants to punish everyone. He left without another word. That evening, Ivy was working in the library basement when a young woman dropped into the chair across from her. She placed 2 coffees and a badly printed business card on the table. You're Ivy Lane, right? That depends on who's asking. Mara Brooks, marketing major. Mara pointed at Ivy's laptop. I saw the bakery video. Ivy straightened. You did. Half the campus saw it. My roommate bought 6 cinnamon rolls because of that grandmother story. She doesn't even like cinnamon. Ivy laughed before she could stop herself. Mara smiled. I run paid ads for student organizations. I'm terrible at storytelling, but I'm good at getting people to click. You're good at making them care. What are you proposing? That we make money before someone older notices what we're doing and takes credit for it. The sentence struck a little too close to home. Ivy studied her. Do you have clients? 1. Do you have an office? My apartment has a kitchen table, equipment, a laptop that sounds like it's preparing for takeoff. Ivy picked up the business card. The ink had smudged around Mara's phone number. Sounds professional. Thank you. I worked hard on the illusion. They named the studio Frameshift Creative. Mara handled outreach, ad placement, and negotiations. Ivy developed the stories, scripts, visual concepts, and edits. Their early clients were not glamorous. A fitness instructor who wanted more trial memberships. A second-hand store struggling to attract younger customers. A dentist who said he wanted to look less terrifying online. They charged too little and promised delivery too quickly. Mara sent invoices at midnight. Ivy edited before sunrise. They learned which clients paid late, which ones changed their minds after approving a concept, and which ones used the phrase, quick adjustment, to describe 6 hours of work. But the results were real. The fitness studio filled 2 new classes. The second-hand store sold out a collection within 1 weekend. Even the dentist received enough appointment requests to send Mara a message containing 3 exclamation marks. By winter, Frameshift had 12 regular clients. Ivy no longer worked every shift at the laundromat. By spring, she moved into a tiny studio apartment. The window faced a brick wall. The kitchen consisted of 1 counter and a stove that tilted slightly to the left. Still, Ivy's name was on the lease. She bought a used desk and placed her first paid invoice in a cheap frame above it. $200. The amount looked almost laughable beside the contracts they handled now. But it had been the first proof that her talent could feed her. During final exam week, Mara sent Ivy a screenshot at 1:12 in the morning. Tell me I'm hallucinating. Ivy opened the image. It showed Olivia Mercer's public portfolio. Olivia had uploaded a campaign for a luxury skincare company. The title was different. The colors had changed, but the structure belonged to Ivy. The emotional hook, the 3-part video sequence, the customer journey, even the phrasing from Ivy's private notes. Ivy opened the full presentation. On the 3rd page, she found a sentence she had written months earlier. Every woman remembers the first product that made her reflection stop feeling like an enemy. Ivy went still. In her first life, Olivia had taken speeches, event concepts, donor pitches, and visual campaigns from her. Whenever Ivy objected, Julian called her jealous. This time, Ivy had original files, cloud backups, email timestamps, revision histories, and Mara. Another message appeared. We are going to destroy her, Ivy replied. First we preserve the evidence, Mara answered immediately. Less exciting, but annoyingly correct. They spent the next hour collecting everything. Original drafts, export dates, client notes, file metadata, screenshots of Olivia's portfolio. Then Ivy noticed the event attached to Olivia's stolen campaign. Whitaker Foundation. Young Innovators. Gala. Olivia was scheduled to receive an award as an emerging creative strategist. The foundation would celebrate her in front of donors, students, and local business owners. Using Ivy's work. An invitation to the gala had been sitting unopened in Ivy's inbox for 3 weeks. Eleanor had probably sent it to prove how little Ivy's absence mattered. Ivy clicked the message. Mara called her immediately. "Tell me we're going. We're going. Tell me there will be rich people and tiny food that requires emotional support. There will. And tell me you have a plan." Ivy looked at the evidence folder on her screen. In her first life, she would have confronted Julian privately. Olivia would have cried. Julian would have demanded proof. Eleanor would have called Ivy ungrateful. This time, she would not carry a public lie into a private room. Ivy moved the cursor to the invitation. Then she clicked accept. "I have a plan." The Whitaker Foundation held the Young Innovators Gala in the glass pavilion behind the estate. Ivy had once thought the building was beautiful. Now, it looked like a display case built to preserve expensive people from consequences. Mara stood beside her, beneath the entrance banner. Celebrating the next generation of female visionaries, she read it twice. "They have an interesting way of spelling plagiarist." "Not yet," Ivy said. "You being calm is becoming personally offensive. I've practiced." That was true. Ivy had spent years inside the Whitaker estate learning how to swallow panic before anyone could use it against her. Tonight, she had 3 copies of the evidence, 1 on her phone. 1 with Mara, 1 already sent to Grant Ellis. Public lies required public corrections. Julian noticed her first. He stood near the donor wall, speaking with 2 foundation directors. His gaze moved from Ivy to Mara, then back again. For a moment, he simply stared. Ivy looked away first, not because she was afraid, because she did not owe him proof that he could still affect her. Eleanor intercepted them near the champagne table. "Ivy." "Mrs. Whitaker." Eleanor's smile was flawless. "I wasn't certain you would attend. I almost didn't. How is your little business?" The word little carried more weight than the entire sentence. "Growing. And your apartment." "Still mine." Eleanor's eyes cooled. "You know, independence can look very similar to stubbornness when one is young. And control can look very similar to concern when one has money." Mara coughed into her glass. Eleanor's smile disappeared for half a second. "You sound like your mother." "No," Ivy said. "I sound like myself. You just never allowed me to use my own voice here." Applause interrupted them. Olivia had stepped onto the stage. Her face appeared on the large screen behind her beside the words. Emerging creative strategist, she thanked Eleanor for her guidance. She thanked the foundation for supporting young women. Then she thanked Julian for always believing in her. Julian moved to the front of the stage. Of course he did. Olivia opened her presentation. Ivy's campaign appeared on the screen. The colors were different. The company name was gone. The title had changed. But the structure was hers. "Modern consumers do not simply buy products," Olivia said. "They purchase emotional identity." Ivy had written that sentence in February. Mara touched her elbow. "You okay?" "Yes." It was not painless. But pain was different when it arrived in a room where Ivy had brought evidence. Olivia moved through the campaign confidently. The emotional hook, the 3-stage video strategy, the line about women no longer seeing an enemy in the mirror. When she finished, the audience applauded. Julian took the microphone. "I've known Olivia most of my life," he said. "If one quality defines her, it's integrity." Mara whispered. He walked directly into the trap and brought a microphone. Julian continued. "She creates from the heart. She never tears others down to gain attention. Everything she has achieved, she earned through her own talent." His eyes settled on Ivy. There it was. Even now, he needed Olivia to be good because Ivy was difficult. He still wanted to define one woman by using the other as a warning. Ivy raised her hand. The mood changed immediately. Eleanor turned sharply. Julian stopped speaking. Ivy smiled politely. "May I ask a question?" "This isn't a question and answer session," Julian said. Olivia gave a soft laugh. "It's fine. I'm happy to answer." No, she was not. She simply believed Ivy had brought anger instead of documentation. Ivy stood. "My question concerns originality. A murmur moved through the audience. Olivia's smile remained fixed. Of course. You said this campaign came from your independent research. Yes. When did you create it? This spring. What date? Olivia glanced at Julian. I don't remember the exact day. I do. The room fell silent. Ivy connected her phone to the pavilion screen. Julian stepped forward. Ivy. She ignored him. Olivia's presentation disappeared. In its place appeared Ivy's original campaign folder. Creation date, revision history, client notes, emails exchanged with Mara, time-stamped exports, cloud backups. Then Ivy placed Olivia's portfolio beside it. The comparison required no explanation. Someone near the front whispered, "Oh my God." Olivia's face lost its color. This isn't what it looks like. Mara leaned toward a donor. It looks extremely committed to what it looks like. Julian came down from the stage. Turn it off. Ivy looked at him. Why? His mouth opened then, closed. Because Olivia is embarrassed, Ivy asked. Because your mother is embarrassed. Or because you just gave a speech about integrity beside stolen work. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I saw similar ideas online. Ivy must have used the same sources. Ivy changed the slide. The sentence about the mirror appeared. Below, it was an early draft containing a missing word Ivy had corrected before the client version. Olivia's hidden speaker notes still contained the same error. Same line. Same punctuation. Same mistake. Ivy enlarged the metadata. Olivia stared at the screen. Mara smiled sweetly. Hidden fields. They're always worth checking. Olivia turned to Julian. I didn't steal anything. For the first time Ivy could remember, Julian did not move toward her. He stared at the evidence. Only the evidence. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, Ivy felt strangely detached. When Julian believed her only after proof trapped him in a corner, it was not trust. It was surrender. Eleanor walked toward Ivy. This is completely inappropriate. What's inappropriate is using my company's work to give someone an award. Julian looked at her. Your company. Yes, Mara lifted a hand. Co-founder. Ivy changed to the final slide. Frameshift Creative LLC beneath it appeared the registration date, client contract, and founders' names. Ivy Lane, Mara Brooks. The surprise on Julian's face was almost insulting. You started a company. My life is not a report I owe you. Olivia recovered enough to speak. I only accessed the files because I wanted to learn. Then you should have learned, Ivy said. Not copied. A foundation director raised his hand. Miss Lane, are you planning legal action? Eleanor glared at him. Ivy kept her voice steady. My attorney is reviewing our options. For now, I expect the foundation to remove Olivia's campaign from all materials and issue a public correction. We do not handle private disputes this way, Eleanor said. Ivy smiled. That is why I left. The silence that followed was full of calculation. Donors watched Olivia differently. Board members exchanged looks. Guests quietly reconsidered every story they had heard about Ivy. Olivia walked toward Julian and held out her hand. Julian, please, he looked at her. Then at the screen. He did not take her hand. Olivia's expression cracked. This was planned, she said, turning on Ivy. You came here to humiliate me. Yes. Several guests inhaled sharply. I planned to protect my work. I planned to preserve the evidence. And I planned to stop allowing people in this house to rewrite what they did to me. Olivia's tears vanished behind sudden anger. You've always wanted everything I have. Ivy looked around the pavilion, the award, Julian, the Whitaker name, the invitation to stand beneath their lights and call it belonging. Once, she had wanted all of it. Now, it seemed painfully small. No, Ivy said. I wanted credit for what was mine. She disconnected her phone. Mara picked up her coat. They walked out together. Halfway down the estate driveway, Julian called Ivy's name. Mara looked at her. Want me to stay? I'm fine. She waited near the car while Ivy turned. Julian stopped several feet away. You built a company, he said. The slide was clear. Why didn't you tell me? Because you are not entitled to updates about my life. His jaw tightened. I didn't know Olivia stole your work. You only assumed I was the problem again. That isn't fair. 10 minutes ago, you praised her integrity while looking directly at me. I didn't say your name. You didn't have to. He looked back toward the pavilion. where the evidence was still burning through his family's perfect evening. "I'm sorry," he said. Ivy studied him. It was his first apology, small, late, incomplete. A younger version of her would have treasured it. This Ivy asked. For what? He frowned. What? What exactly are you sorry for? Believing Olivia, humiliating me, calling me ungrateful, coming to my school to see whether I failed, or standing beside stolen work because it was easier than questioning her. His face slowly paled. I didn't know about the trust. You never asked. You were young. You were young when we were children. You weren't young tonight. He looked lost. I don't know what you want me to say. That is the most honest thing you've said. Ivy turned toward the waiting car. Behind her, Julian spoke again. I always thought you would come back. She looked over her shoulder. I know. Then she got into the car and closed the door. 6 months later, Frameshift Creative signed its first $1 million year. That afternoon, the office phone rang. Mara answered while holding a supermarket cupcake. Her expression changed. She covered the receiver. It's Whitaker Holdings. Ivy looked at her. They want to hire us. For 1 second, the room was silent. Then Ivy began to laugh. Send them our highest quote. How high? Ivy thought of every meal she had been told to appreciate, every hour of unpaid work, every apology forced out of her. High enough to hurt. 2 weeks later, Julian Whitaker entered Frameshift Creative as a client. Mara greeted him with the same professional smile she used for late-paying dentists and founders who believed exposure counted as compensation. Mr. Whitaker, she said. Ivy will see you now. Julian looked around the office. Frameshift occupied the second floor of a renovated warehouse near the train line. Employees moved between glass meeting rooms. Campaign concepts covered the walls. A neon sign near reception read, Change the frame. Change the story. His gaze stopped on Ivy's first invoice, framed beside her office door. $200. Years earlier, he had asked what money she expected to survive on. Now his family had requested a proposal from the company she built without them. Ivy opened the conference room door. Julian, he turned. For a moment, he simply looked at her. Not at her clothes, not at the awards on the wall, at the fact that she had not been waiting for him. Thank you for meeting with me, he said. Whitaker Holdings requested a brand recovery proposal. Yes. Recovery is an optimistic word. His mouth tightened. It is also accurate. He placed a folder on the table. The foundation's reputation had continued to decline after Olivia's plagiarism was exposed. Donors wanted answers. Board members wanted distance. Journalists had begun asking questions about Ivy's trust settlement. The Whitakers were not facing ruin. Families like theirs rarely did. They were facing something they considered almost as dangerous: public distrust. Our rates are in the proposal, Ivy said. I reviewed them. They are not negotiable, I understand. The old Julian would have laughed at the price. This one only nodded. Why did you come personally? Ivy asked. My father wanted to send someone else, but I insisted. Why? His fingers tightened around the folder. Because I helped create the problem. The sentence sounded rehearsed. Ivy told him so. It was, Julian admitted. I knew I would say it badly if I didn't practice. That answer surprised her. He looked through the glass wall toward the employees outside. I was cruel to you. Ivy remained silent. Not once, he continued. And not because Olivia manipulated me, she did, but I let her. Blaming her for everything would be another way of avoiding responsibility. His voice lowered. Hurting you made me feel in control. Everyone in that house treated your dependence as proof that you were beneath us. I learned to do the same. Once, Ivy had wanted those words more than anything. Now, they arrived after she had built a life strong enough not to need them. What do you want? She asked. A chance to make amends. You can make amends. That does not give you access to me. He absorbed the distinction. I know. Do you? I'm trying to. Ivy closed the folder. Frameshift will consider the contract. Mara will manage communication. You may contact me only during scheduled team meetings. Payne crossed his face, but he nodded. That is fair. It isn't about fairness. It is a boundary. I understand. He stood. At the door, he paused. I'm proud of you. Ivy's expression hardened. Don't. He turned back. You told me I would never make it without your family. You don't get to claim pride now that I proved you wrong. Julian lowered his eyes. You're right. After he left, Mara entered carrying 2 coffees. That was emotionally nauseating. It was a client meeting. Do we take the account? Ivy looked at the proposal. Revenge did not always arrive with flames. Sometimes it arrived as a clearly written invoice. Yes, she said, but they pay in advance. Mara smiled. My favorite form of healing. Frameshift's first condition was simple. They would not use lies to repair the Whitaker name. If the family wanted public trust, they had to admit what had damaged it. The foundation would be separated from direct family control. Independent directors would review spending. Olivia's stolen campaign would be publicly corrected. Eleanor would step away from day-to-day leadership. The Whitaker board hated the plan. Their attorneys hated it more. Eleanor hated Ivy. That part was familiar. At the first strategy meeting, Eleanor sat across from Ivy with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. We must be careful, Eleanor said. Private misunderstandings should not become public entertainment. Ivy changed the slide. A business publication headline appeared behind her. Whitaker Foundation questioned after trust settlement and plagiarism scandal. It is already public, Ivy said. Your choice is whether you respond with accountability or let everyone else define the story. The trust issue has been exaggerated. The settlement says otherwise. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You always enjoyed making yourself the victim. Before Ivy could answer, Julian spoke. Number the room turned toward him. He looked directly at his mother. Olivia stole Ivy's work. We all saw the evidence. The trust expenses were mishandled. Pretending otherwise is why this keeps getting worse. Eleanor went still. Julian. He did not look away. For the first time, Ivy heard him defend the truth while his family was present. A younger Ivy would have treasured the moment. This Ivy only thought, you should have done it years ago. The board approved Frameshift's plan. Eleanor lost operational control of the foundation. New directors were appointed. Spending reports became public. Olivia's name disappeared from its website. The reforms worked. Donner confidence began recovering, and Frameshift's reputation grew with it. Not because Ivy saved the Whitakers, because she forced them to stop hiding. After one meeting, Eleanor followed her to the elevator. You must be enjoying this. I enjoy successful work. You enjoy humiliating us. Ivy pressed the call button. You humiliated yourselves. I documented it. Eleanor's face hardened. Do not mistake temporary influence for belonging. There it was again. Belonging. The bait that had once controlled Ivy. She turned. I don't want to belong to your family. Eleanor looked genuinely confused. You always believed excluding me was punishment, Ivy continued. Because in your world, being a Whitaker is the greatest thing anyone could want. The elevator arrived. But once I stopped wanting a place at your table, all you had left was the bill. Ivy stepped inside. Julian stood at the end of the hallway. He had heard everything. Good. Some truths deserved witnesses. 3 months later, Ivy was invited to speak at the Artemis Women in Business Gala. The event gathered founders, journalists, investors, and brand executives inside Greyhaven's Modern Art Museum. Minutes before Ivy was scheduled to appear, Mara's phone began vibrating. Then, it vibrated again. Her expression changed. What happened? Ivy asked. Mara turned the screen toward her. A gossip account had posted a long story. Self-made founder Ivy Lane hid her privileged upbringing. The post included old photographs. 14-year-old Ivy at Whitaker charity dinners. Ivy standing behind Eleanor in foundation publicity shots. Ivy beside Julian at a school event. Anonymous sources claimed the Whitakers had treated her like a daughter. They said she had used the family's money and connections, then built a career by pretending to escape poverty. More posts appeared. She always envied Olivia. The Whitakers gave her everything. Her victim story is a marketing campaign. Mara swore. Olivia. Probably. We can cancel. Half the audience is reading it. Ivy looked toward the stage entrance. A few years earlier, being publicly called ungrateful would have reduced her to silence. Now she had records. She had a company. Most importantly, she had her own voice. This is the right room, she said. A stage manager approached. Miss Lane, you're on in 30 seconds. Ivy handed her phone to Mara, then she walked toward the lights. Ivy walked onto the stage beneath white lights. Half the audience was still looking at their phones. The moderator, journalist Priya Shah, began with questions about hiring, creative strategy, and Frameshift's rapid growth. Then she placed her notes on her lap. Ivy, a story circulating tonight claims that your self-made image is misleading. You were raised by the wealthy Whitaker family and appeared at their charity events for years. Would you like to respond? The room tightened. Mara stood near the side wall, furious enough to set off the fire alarm through eye contact alone. Julian sat in the third row. Ivy had not known he would attend. He leaned forward, his face pale with anger. But for once, the anger was not directed at her. Ivy accepted the microphone. Yes, she said. She did not apologize. My mother died when I was young, and I lived with the Whitakers afterward. That part is true. Photographs from the gossip post appeared on the screen behind her. A teenage Ivy standing beside Eleanor. A formal dinner. A foundation photograph in which Ivy had been placed slightly behind everyone else. I wore dresses paid for through accounts. I did not control. I smiled when adults called me lucky. I was told that food, housing, and education were gifts I would spend the rest of my life repaying. No one moved. What the public did not know was that my mother had already created a trust to support me. Ivy changed the slide. A short summary of the trust appeared beside the final settlement confirmation. Private details had been removed. The Whitakers charged expenses against that trust, while allowing me to believe I survived entirely because of their generosity. A murmur spread through the room. When I turned 21, I requested an independent review. The matter ended in a financial settlement and changes to the foundation's oversight. She displayed Eleanor's email ordering her not to contact outsiders. Nothing more was needed. I am not ashamed that I needed help as a child, Ivy said. Children should never be ashamed of needing somewhere safe to live. Her grip on the microphone remained steady. What should cause shame is teaching a girl that survival creates a lifelong debt. The room became silent. When I left the Whitaker estate, I had one travel bag, $460, and documents I barely understood. Mara wiped at one eye, then pretended to inspect the lighting. I built Frameshift through work mistakes, paying clients, and a co-founder who threatens office equipment when it fails. Laughter broke the tension. If self-made means no one has ever helped you, then no one is self-made. Ivy paused. But if it means refusing to let the people who hurt you own everything you build afterward, then yes. She looked directly into the cameras. I built this. Applause began in the back row. Then more people joined. Within seconds, the audience was standing. Julian rose with them, but Ivy looked away. This moment did not belong to him. By midnight, the story had reversed. The next morning, journalists identified the source of the anonymous posts. Olivia Mercer had hired a private public relations consultant and used 2 anonymous accounts to spread the accusations. She had been careless. Emails showed her approving the photographs, suggesting phrases such as ungrateful orphan, and demanding that the posts appear before Ivy took the stage. 3 brands ended their contracts with her by noon. The university reopened its review of her portfolio. Her consulting page vanished before sunset. Olivia's final message arrived 3 weeks later. You took everything from me. Julian won't speak to me. Eleanor won't return my calls. My clients are gone. I hope you're satisfied. Ivy replied once. I did not take your place. I left the room where I had to stand beneath you so you could feel important. Do not contact me again. Then she forwarded the message to Grant and closed the file. Julian came to Frameshift that evening. Ivy almost refused to see him. Then she noticed the small envelope in his hand. He entered her office, but did not sit until she gestured toward the chair. I confronted Olivia, he said. That is between you and Olivia. I know. He looked down. My mother knew Olivia was contacting people. She says she didn't know the details. Do you believe her? The answer cost him something. Good. Truth usually did. Julian raised his eyes. I owe you more than an apology. Yes. I can't undo what happened. I can't return your childhood. His voice weakened. I still need to say it. You may say it, Ivy replied, but I will not carry the weight for you afterward. He apologized for the treehouse, the sketchbook, the school dance, the necklace, the years of calling Ivy sensitive whenever she told the truth. He apologized for visiting the laundromat because he wanted proof she had failed, for enjoying her loyalty while refusing to give her a real place in his life. For every time Olivia's tears mattered more than Ivy's evidence. The apologies were specific. That mattered. They were late. That mattered more. When he finished, Ivy looked through the glass wall at the company she had built. I accept that you understand more now than you did before. Hope appeared in his eyes. But I am not reopening my life to you. The hope disappeared. I'm not asking for everything back immediately. I know. That is why I am answering before the request grows. Julian's hands tightened. Ivy took a breath. I loved you once. His face changed completely. I loved you before I understood the difference between love and being chosen. You gave me kindness rarely enough that I treated every small piece like a feast. His eyes filled. That love belonged to the girl who believed pain was the price of staying close to someone. Ivy's voice remained calm. She is gone. A tear moved down Julian's cheek. I'm sorry. I know. He placed the envelope on her desk. I found this in my mother's files. It should have been given to you years ago. Ivy recognized the handwriting immediately. Her mother's that night, alone in her apartment. She opened the letter. My dearest Ivy, money cannot replace me, and documents cannot hold you when you are afraid. But I hope what I leave gives you choices. Ivy's vision blurred. Please remember this. Gratitude is not debt. Shelter is not ownership. If anyone requires you to become smaller in order to earn love, leave the room. Ivy pressed the letter to her lips and cried. She cried for her mother, for the girl outside the treehouse, for the young woman who had mistaken endurance for devotion, for the first life she had spent waiting for Julian to open a door. The following spring, Frameshift created the Evelyn Lane Open Door Initiative. It offered emergency housing, paid creative internships, equipment grants, and small business funding to young women leaving unstable homes. The first recipient arrived expecting to be rejected. You don't need to thank us for paying you, Ivy told her. The young woman looked startled. Ivy recognized that expression. Months later, Julian returned one final box of Evelyn's belongings. He waited in the lobby instead of entering Ivy's office without permission. Inside the box were photographs, old letters, and a small brass key with no label. Before leaving, Julian looked at Ivy. I know what your answer should be, he said. But I need to ask once, clearly. After that, I'll respect it. Ivy waited. Could we ever start again? There were no guests, no cameras, no Olivia or Eleanor, only Julian and Ivy, standing inside a company built from everything he once said she could never accomplish. No, Ivy said. His face tightened, but he did not argue. We cannot start again. Starting again is for two people who became lost together. She held his gaze. You kept me outside for years, and I built a life there. Her voice softened, but the answer did not. I'm not knocking anymore. Julian nodded. I understand. Live differently, Ivy said. That is the only apology that still matters. He stepped into the elevator. Goodbye, Ivy. Goodbye, Julian. The doors closed. Ivy returned to her office and placed the small brass key beside her framed first invoice. Perhaps it no longer opened anything. It did not matter. Not every key needed a lock. Some keys existed only to prove that doors were real. People would later tell Ivy's story in simpler terms. The girl left the mansion. The girl built a company. The boy regretted losing her. But Ivy's life had not begun when Julian regretted anything. It began the night she stopped begging to be kept. Wealth came later. The apology came too late. Freedom arrived first. And once Ivy owned her freedom, Julian Whitaker no longer possessed anything she needed back. Well, where we even begin with this constellation of mediocrity? Let's start with Julian Whitaker, a man who watched a woman bleed herself dry for his family, and his only contribution was to hand her a mop and tell her not to be dramatic. He confused obedience with devotion. He mistook silence for agreement, and when she finally stopped orbiting him, he looked up at the sky and thought the sun had malfunctioned. No, sweetheart. The sun simply realized it had been warming a rock that would never grow anything. His grand apology came only after she built an empire visible enough that ignoring her became socially inconvenient. That is not remorse. That is reputation management wearing a sad face. And that final question, could we ever start again? The sheer audacity of a man who locked you outside for a decade, asking if you'd like to come back in now that the house is cold. Sir, she built her own mansion, with better lighting and no room for you. Now, Olivia Mercer, the woman who turned plagiarism into a personality trait. She didn't just steal Ivy's work, she accepted an award for it, on a stage, with a microphone, while the actual creator sat in the audience. That takes a very specific blend of shamelessness and stupidity that I almost have to respect, from a purely anthropological standpoint. Almost, she spent years positioning herself as the creative genius, and the only original idea she ever had was to copy someone else's homework and change the font color. And when she was caught, her defense was, I panicked. Darling, plagiarism is not a stress response. It is a character flaw you decorated with tears. And finally, Eleanor, the matriarch, the architect of it all. A woman who took a grieving child's inheritance, spent it on charity gala dresses and etiquette classes. The child never wanted. Then looked that child in the eye and said, be grateful. She weaponized the word family until it meant nothing but a ledger of emotional debt. She taught Ivy that love had a price tag and belonging required monthly installments of dignity. Every meal came with a receipt. Every kindness came with a leash. She didn't raise Ivy. She managed her, like an asset, like a line item. And when the asset walked out the door and became more valuable than the entire portfolio, Eleanor still couldn't see past her own reflection long enough to understand what she'd lost. Control is not love. A gilded cage is not a home. And calling exploitation family tradition does not make it heritage. It makes it fraud with better table manners. But here is what I need you to hear tonight, and I need you to hear it clearly. Not every debt is real. Some people hand you a bill for air they never owned. They will tell you that survival is a favor, that food is generosity, that shelter is charity, that your existence in their space is a gift you must spend your whole life repaying. And if you grew up inside that lie, if you learned to say thank you before you learned to say no, I want you to know, the girl who believed that story was not stupid. She was surviving, but surviving is not living. And you are allowed to stop performing gratitude for people who only kept you close because your smallness made them feel tall. Leave the room. Build outside. And when they come knocking, because they always come knocking once the lights are on and the cameras are rolling, you do not owe them a door